All right, folks, welcome back into another edition of the High School Huddle, your one-stop shop for everything and all things Section 5 sports. I'm AJ Feldman. He's Carl Jones. Carl, we are back after a little bit of a one-week break to cover this thing called the PGA Championship. We have, at least I have somewhat rested up, somewhat recovered back from this week. Carl, how are you doing in the post-Oak Hill era?
I'm all good. Like you said, it was definitely a couple days where I needed to just woosah and just not do much. But, it was a fun experience to cover something like that, especially for someone like myself who's not really well-versed in golf, to be quite frank with everyone out there who's listening. But it was a dope experience, and I hope that everyone, if they didn't go out to Oak Hill at least once last week, they at least were covering it. Were watching it and things of that nature, because it was a fun event for all 7 days. All 7 days had something to offer.
Yeah, we had great weather for most of it Saturday, obviously a little bit of a bust. But even then Saturday, the play never stopped. You had the fans still coming out. Everybody kind of sucked it up, put on their ponchos, and luckily it was not cold. It was not a cold rain, so you were still able to enjoy it a little bit. But yeah, a very exciting week of golf. Brooks Koepka getting back on top, his 5th major championship. Of course, Michael Block, everything that happened with him, his hole-in-one, which when I heard about the hole-in-one, I was at hole 13, the Hill of Fame hole, kind of watching the leaders come through. And about 30 seconds, I heard this big roar, like, oh, we're all just kind of wondering what this roar is. Like, oh, is that a Rory roar? Like, did Scotty make a birdie? Is he charging up? And then we see on the video Jumbotron board, like 30 or 40, maybe a minute later, Michael Block has hit a hole-in-one on the 15th hole. And I'm looking at this, and I literally couldn't, I'm looking at this, I'm like, this is the most unbelievable sentence I could ever imagine seeing on this board right now. I'm like, there's like, we're looking around like, are you guys seeing this? Like, is this actually a thing? And everybody started applauding. So a really fun week of golf with some great moments that, like you said, I think even if you weren't the biggest golf fanatic, you found some enjoyment in this week, or you're just glad that the traffic's gone in Pittsford.
I think some people are probably glad about that point. Let's not be naive here and think some people don't like getting to work on time and stuff like that.
Yeah, so a very fun time indeed. The food was good. Hope all of you guys who followed along on our coverage on RossFirst.com, on Channel 8, our special every night. I hope you appreciated it, because we certainly appreciated bringing it to you. But with that out of the way, it is time to get back to the nitty-gritty. Sectionals are in full swing. Championship games are set in certain sports. Semifinals coming up or are tonight in other sports. And to kind of break it all down, we're just going to do a segment called What Did We Miss? Inspired by the opening song in Act 2 of Hamilton, for all of my musical friends out there. No Thomas Jefferson. However, we missed a lot in the past 2 weeks. And I say that wholeheartedly because while we were at Oak Hill was basically the only thing, certainly in my life, that I focused on. Not even I just got home, I grabbed something out of the fridge, ate, went to bed. Like, you cannot exert any brain power from anything other than the PGA Championship. We barely followed along with the Amerks, but we missed a lot. There was a lot going on. We're going to try and catch you up. We're going to try and set the stage for what's coming up. Carl, we're going to start off with boys lacrosse. We're going to kind of go through each of our 4 main key sports here. And Carl, what did you miss in boys lacrosse?
We missed that this Pittsford boys lacrosse team is pretty darn good. They finished the regular season at 15-2. I want to know, are they a clear-cut tier above everyone else in Class A? Their last break was in 2017. So is this the year they're going to finally break through? Are they hungry enough to finally get over the mountaintop in that regard? The only 2 losses this year, an overtime loss to Victor. You were at that game. And then also Fayetteville Manlius, from the Syracuse area. I can never say that school right, even when I went to Syracuse. They lost to them back in April, so clearly both teams are different from at that point. Rex Kesselring, Luke Fliss, remember him from football. And then they got this guy named Jackson Green, plays a lot of sports over there at Pittsford. He's pretty darn good. He's going to be playing D1 next year. They got a lot of dudes over there. They're in the semifinal round right now in Class A. They already beat Hilton earlier this year pretty convincingly. And then on the other side, they already took down Penfield 9-6. They have not faced McQuaid, who is the other who will face Penfield in this other semifinal matchup. Is this year they just break through? Are they just that much better than everyone in Class A, or is the regular season fool's gold? That remains to be seen. But from what I've seen on paper, this Pittsford team is pretty darn good, and everyone else is looking up at them.
Yeah, Class A in the past couple of years at least has kind of been a little bit like you kind of alluded to, like a bit of a muddle. Like, we've had some powerhouse teams in Class B, Canandaigua making it to states last year, Victor, of course, in recent years. And Class A has just been kind of like, good teams, but Pittsford, as you mentioned, might be just a tier above. They've got big wins this season. They just beat Rush Henrietta by 5. They've beaten Spencerport, they've beaten Canandaigua, they've beaten Fairport, they've beaten Irondequoit, they've beaten Penfield, they've beaten all these teams. And Class A, they haven't faced McQuaid yet. That should be a really good game if they do meet up in the sectional championship game. But Pittsford's certainly hungry for that sectional title, as you mentioned. What did I miss in boys lacrosse? I missed the Webster Schroeder Warriors taking down Canandaigua. The defending state runners-up, obviously this year they've kind of they lost a lot from last year's team, so they haven't been quite at that same level, of course. But this kind of came out of nowhere here. Canandaigua they actually did suffer a tough loss to Greece, so maybe Canandaigua's just been slumping down the stretch. Now they've ended their season with 4 of the last 5 losses. But Schroeder, before that victory over Canandaigua, they had lost 8 of their last 10 games. And they get it done. Casey Burns was phenomenal in net for the Schroeder Warriors. Came up with 15 saves, which is a lot. They win 5-4. They shut them out in the first half. They were up 4-0 at the half. They hang on for dear life in the second half. They get a 5-4 win. Anthony DeRosa with 2 goals and 1 assist to lead the Warriors offensively. And what a win by Schroeder. This is a team that really hasn't had a ton of lacrosse success recently. Obviously, it's very difficult to do a whole bunch of anything in Class B when you've got all these teams. They've only won 1 sectional championship in their program's history, all the way back 20 years ago in 2003. Can they keep this momentum going? They've got Spencerport on Saturday in 2 days. It'll be another tough test for them. But the other thing I want to point out here is just, we've talked about Victor all season long. It might be Victor a clear tier above the rest. They've really only been tested by teams in Class A so far this season in Section 5. They faced Irondequoit and Spencerport so far this season. They haven't played Schroeder, but they beat both of those 2 teams, the other teams alive in the semifinals. They beat them both 14-4 in the regular season. So it's going to tighten up in the postseason. It just always does. But Schroeder, what a win. Victor, it's going to take quite an effort to knock them off in sectionals.
Yeah, I saw that tweet yesterday about Canandaigua getting upset, and I was a little shocked. And I was like, yeah, I know they aren't the strongest this year, but man, that's a tough loss. So shout out to the Warriors for getting it done in that regard. And like you mentioned, we talked about Pittsford a little bit. I think Victor is in his own little classification of his own in terms of dominance here in Section 5.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough to take down the Blue Devils, but hey, that's why they play the game. So now we move on to girls lacrosse. Carl, what did you miss?
Man, I missed down the stretch of how tight this Class C race is going to be, man. Halmack finished the season at 13-4, so did Aquinas. And then HFL's record is 10-7, but if anyone has followed Section 5 lacrosse, they schedule only Class A and B teams. I swear, maybe 2 teams in their own classification all year long. So their record is not really a big indication of how talented they actually are. I'm not going to give you the whole runaround of how these teams got here, but I want to give you some common opponents just to show you how close these teams are. The only 4 losses that Halmack has had this year to Spencerport, Irondequoit, and then the Penn Yan twice. So 2 teams in classifications larger than them, and then Penn Yan, who was a really darn good team in Class D. Aquinas, 2 losses to Mercy, obviously in a big dog classification. They lost to Halmack, though. Okay, 6-4 game. That was tight. And then Clarence, an out-of-conference, out-of-section team. And then Mercy, how about some of their wins? A win over Penn Yan, a win over Mercy, a win over Spencerport, and then also another win over Schroeder. So these teams, no matter what the records say, they're not that far apart from none of each other. Now, granted, Halmack is
that's what team at the end there? What team? What was the last team you're talking about?
Schroeder.
Okay, Schroeder?
HFL beats.
You said HFL. Mercy the first time. So I just want to get that straight for the people.
My bad. I was so excited to get this ramble off my chest. I kind of, stumbled upon that a little bit. But you get the gist. Those 3 teams, get the gist now. I hope the people at home get the gist, by the way. But all these 3 teams aren't that far apart from each other. I know Halmack has won the last 2 sectional titles. they get a little saving grace. They face Geneva in the semifinals. Geneva's obviously not going to lay over, but I think Palmac is a better team on paper, at least. AQ and HFL face each other. That sectional final is going to be a doozy, as it always is in Class C. I can't wait to see how that one turns out, because on paper, it sounds like these teams are like neck and neck with like maybe one team above the other. It got some stars all up and down that trio of the teams, Rick and Deal, and then the Hinchcliffe sisters. I know it's going to be some fun results in that classification for sure.
Well, you talk about Palmac winning, the last 2 sectional titles. Technically, if, when you count the pandemic years, they've won the last 5 sectional titles. Those all in Class D. So now you've got Palmac stepping up to Class C, which has been HFL's kingdom in the past recent years. They have won a metric ton of sectional championships. Let me see if I can get this specifically right. They're not Girls Lax isn't the website isn't helping me out here with their sectional titles. It's hiding on me. So, but they have won a lot. They've basically made it every single year, just about every single year. So yeah, Class C, that is going to be fun. If it does get to those 2 teams in the sectional championship game, that'll be a good one to say the least. I'm going to talk about a little bit here about the Victor Blue Devils. Girls lacrosse, obviously. The boys have been dominant all year long. The girls slipped up a little bit throughout the season, not quite the Victor of old. However, Victor might have gotten its mojo back. I believe, highlighted their matchup against Canandaigua to close out the regular season. That was a drubbing. Victor won 13-6 in that one. They were up 7-1 at halftime. And Victor might have found its formula. They played a lot through Devin Livingston, 3 goals and 3 assists, but otherwise, they had 5 players in that game with at least 2 goals. So they are not just the Devin Livingston show. It is a diverse scoring attack. And Victor appears to be on a collision course with Canandaigua to meet them in the sectional championship game. Both of these classes we're talking about right now, C and B, they're playing today as we record this on Thursday. So hopefully you don't get, too, upset with what goes on today. But Victor peaking at the right time here down the stretch.
And it all makes sense. I mean, they lost a lot off of last year's team. A lot of those ladies are playing in college ball right now. So a younger team, not saying they're like absurdly young, but they have a lot of ladies who haven't really played varsity lacrosse this year just by nature of the people who are in front of them. So it's going to take some time, you imagine, to, gel a little bit, get used to varsity lacrosse. And boy, are they gelling right now, right into the time of year that they need to be. That win over Canandaigua, I had no idea about, and that's really darn impressive considering what Canandaigua's done this year.
That's why we do this segment, Carl. It's time now to change over to baseball, where it's been a pretty wild and crazy sectional tournament time, as it often is with baseball. One swing of the bat, one hot pitcher start on the mound can really change the course of a bracket. Carl, what did you miss in baseball action here?
I didn't really miss it because the day it happened was all over my Twitter feed. I believe this was this Monday. Second straight year, Hilton is upset in the first round, top seed. This time to Penfield. Penfield was 6-15 entering the game, 2-1 final over the Cadets. Look, the Cadets were balling this year. They were 16-4, had a pitcher, James Capalupo, Division I bound pitcher, dominated all year long. I believe he just broke a Section 5 record in something with strikeouts, I believe, towards the end of the season. So you imagine, hot pitcher going into the sectional finals. I'm a bet on Hilton. Penfield didn't care about none of that. Now, granted, they only scored 2 runs, but all they need is a W. That's all they care about. Capalupo did ball out in that game with 11 strikeouts. But Penfield, Alexander Young, go-ahead RBI single in the 4th to get the job done, knocking off the Cadets. That impressive win. But in the regular season, it wasn't like these 2 teams were like far apart from each other. Hilton beat them 1-0 in one game and then 7-2 in the next one. So it wasn't like this was all a normal 1-9 matchup where Hilton was like 20 runs better than the other. Penfield came to play. I mean, by nature, baseball, like you just mentioned, is just a sport where upsets are bound to happen. Just hot pitcher, a couple swings of the bat. But man, second year in a row, this happens to Hilton. I know that sucks for those kids over there. I'm feeling for them. Unfortunately, Penfield did lose to Fairport the next round, so their Cinderella run did not go much further. But that was the thing that caught my eye, man. Hilton upset second year in a row, this time at the hands of Penfield.
Yeah, these baseball championship games already set. They're going to be on Saturday, like you mentioned. Fairport knocking off Penfield, who Penfield, just on reputation alone. Every time I looked at their like schedule, the teams they were coming up, anytime I saw Penfield on the schedule, I'm like, oh, this is going to be a great game. But then I kind of had to remember, oh wait, Penfield's kind of down this year. They're not winning a lot of games. Well, apparently Penfield wasn't all too much down as they get that win. Fairport's going to take on Victor, who won in the 13th inning, I believe, against Schroeder. So that was a crazy game, to say the least. I'm going to talk about Churchville-Chili making it to the A1 championship game for the first time since 2009, doing it as you dream. Bottom of the 7th inning, Braden Reyna, walk-off home run to knock off Irondequoit 5-4. A lot of resiliency shown by the Saints in this game. They were up 4-2 heading into the 7th. Eagles were down to their last strike. They got 2 runs to tie it up. So, you know, you're walking in that 7th and like, oh man, we blew this. Like, you know, woe is me. What's going on? Leadoff hitter. I believe he was the leadoff hitter in the lineup. I'm not quite sure if it was the first player in that inning, but first pitch of his at bat, home run over the fence. And now Churchville-Chili might be primed for a big push here at the end. They're going to take on Athena in the sectional championship game. They played them in the regular season. They beat them 7-1. So they got to be feeling good heading into this matchup. But Braden Reyna, walk-off hero for the Saints.
Man, he just lived the dream of every little kid out there. I mean, I didn't even play baseball, and I wanted to do that. Man, send my team to the championship game off a homer. Man, I'm just letting y'all know at home right now. If that would have been me, I'm bat flipping, I'm cartwheeling, I'm doing everything around those bases. I'm going viral. Okay, so I'm assuming he didn't do that because I didn't see it on social media. But he's clearly a better kid than I was, because in my head, when I dreamed of that moment, man, I'm throwing the bat all the way to the outfield. I'm cartwheeling. I'm pumping my chest at everybody. Shout out to him for being a better kid than I was, man.
Twitter is having a unwritten rules of the game discourse if Carl ever gets this to happen. I did not see any video like that. Pickett Splinters does have some pictures of that. No helmet on, so the helmet, made the toss at some point, but I have not seen any reports of cartwheels, confetti, fireworks, anything of that nature. So props to them for keeping things level-headed. But we should have a lot of great sectional finals coming up on Saturday. Softball sectionals will also be on Saturday. However, we do not have those matchups set. Those are all, most, if not all, I believe actually all of these semifinal games are being played today. So it's kind of tough for us to really talk about this too much. But I just want to, off the bat, highlight kind of the powerhouses that are left in Class AA. You've got Victor, you've got Brighton, you've got Schroeder, you've got Rush Henrietta, 4 teams who are more than worthy of raising a sectional brick at the end of this thing. So far during this regular season, Schroeder is 4-1 against these teams. Victor is 3-2 against these teams. RH is 2-3 against these teams. And Brighton, while they may be 0-3, they did have a really nice win against Thomas to close down the regular season down the stretch. So they're more than capable. I think I added up all those things correctly. If I'm not, don't come after me. I did the best I can. It's tough to work around the website. But either way, we've got 4 teams in Class AA who are more than worthy to raise a sectional brick. It is going to be maybe one of the best brackets that we have out here on the market. And it's going to be a good one to see. So whatever teams are left in that sectional championship game, they earned it.
Speaking of Class AA, Class A, they got a little collision course for the championship game if things break a certain way. Thomas and Irondequoit. Irondequoit with a much better record. However, Thomas, as we know, they can rise to the occasion and compete with, I want to say, anywhere in New York State based off some of the teams they've taken down this year. Haven't faced each other this year, I don't believe. So we'll see how that match up, if that does happen in the Class A sectional championship game. Yeah, but these ladies have been competing all year, AJ. I think we're getting, it's gonna be a fun weekend. I'll just say that. I'll say that.
And then on the other side of that Class A bracket, A2, you have Mercy upsetting Mendon. Mercy probably a little underseeded at the 8th seed, but taking down Lily Goldberg 7-6. I don't care what seed you are, what time of the bracket that is. That's a heck of a win. at the other side of that bracket, you got HFL and Sutherland, two teams that have met a lot. Perennial contenders. I believe it might be a rematch of last year's title game. And then I even want to talk about Class C a little bit here. Class C1, you've got the 4, the 6, the 7, and the 8 left in that. So upsets all abound. In about 2 hours from when we record this, Letchworth is about to play Avon, which should be a great game. Letchworth has hitters up the wazoo. Avon obviously just made it to the state final four, state championship, state final four, I believe. You got their phenomenal freshman pitcher, Jesse Cry. So a lot of great softball. You're going to have to go to rochesterfirst.com to see all these sectional championship games finished out because they should be good today, the semifinal games, rather.
Yeah, we haven't caught a lot of the softball this year, but blame that on this thing called the PGA Championship at Oak Hill. Blame them. I don't know. I ain't got much for you outside of that. It's their fault.
It should be great. Like I mentioned, sectionals on Saturday for baseball and softball. Then lacrosse, they come up next week. And then we get right into Far West Regionals. We get right into the states. It comes at you fast. It comes at you furious, especially when the Amerks are also taking up a lot of our time with their run. Controversial coaching decision by the Amerks to only choose until now to start winning every single game. It seemed like something you might have wanted to do earlier in the year, but hey, I guess you got to peak at the right time. But that'll do it for us today on the High School Huddle. When we be back, we'll be able to recap all these sectional championship games. We'll maybe get to reach out to some of our friends from Buffalo to talk about little Far West Regionals. We'll see what exactly happens there. But yeah, we are in for a wild next couple of days, Carl.
It's good to be back around high school sports. I love the PGA Championship and what it got to offer. But these kids, they put on performances, and it's good to highlight them and give them the stage they deserve.
RochesterFirst.com, YouTube, that's where you can catch us on the video side of things, audio, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. You know where to find us. Like, comment, rate, subscribe, all that good stuff. For Carl Jones, I'm AJ Fellman. It is now time to break the huddle. We will see you next time.